Dear young athlete, know that you are more than what you can do in your respective sport. That you're more than that. You are a whole person. That's just one of the facets of who you are. And when you know that, I believe that you will excel in that sport in which you're in because you give attention to every aspect of your life.
What's up, people? Welcome to the Dear Young Athlete podcast, where we talk to coaches and athletes about their journeys and what advice they would give to a younger version of themselves. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson. You could call me JT. If you want to hear my story or why I do this, it will be in episode number 1. But enough about me. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. This man is a husband, he's a father, he's a former Division 1 football player at Murray State. He's a high school football coach and he's a pastoral resident. Above all that, he's a man of God, and he's somebody that when I first met him, it seemed like we had an instant connection, and I could just tell he was an authentic individual. So we're blessed to speak with Darrell Davis, aka DJ. DJ, what's going on, man?
Oh, nothing much, man. Man, I'm just glad to be here, man. To be a part of this, man. Thank you for inviting me, man. Yeah, man. I'm ready to get this rolling.
All right, all right. We'll start off, man. Tell us about the athletic journey. Where did it start for you? How did you fall in love with sports?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It started young though, man. All I did was run. You know what I mean? That's how my parents would tell it. You know what I mean? All he did was run. But there's some truth to that because, growing up, man, in elementary school, we always had a competition of who's the fastest kid in the school in your grade level. And I always tended to win. And so over time, I guess my parents decided and said, hey, this kid loves to run. Let's try him at track. My parents threw me in the track at 8, man. And it kind of just, that kind of propelled me, man, into the space of sports. But track was my first introduction into the world of sports. Started that at 8, man. And then from there, man, got involved with football due to a track coach being a football coach.
Mm.
And, what I mean? Football, man, it almost came easy. And I kind of adopted football as my love. And I just kept, man, finding myself in spaces, man, that allowed me to use my athletic gifts and be able to perform and kind of show the world like, hey, I have the ability to do this. So really, man, it started at a young age, man, from
Yeah.
elementary school all the way throughout college. So sports has been a very foundational in my life since I was about 5. So
Did you do track too in college or just in high school?
now I did track, man. I did track only from the age of 8 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a knee condition that I had to end up walking away from track and even football for a short time. So yeah,
Wow. Wow. So I mean it's just the adrenaline rush of winning a race in track
yeah,
is just pretty incredible. Is I mean I only won maybe one race in my track life, but I still remember it.
yes sir.
Um so you were injured for a while and you couldn't run track or play football.
Yeah.
Um what was that like for you? That being such a foundational part of you that you couldn't do.
Yeah, man. To be real, man, it was difficult at the beginning. You know what I mean? Because it's like a discovery period. From age of 8 through the age of 12, I was in, organized sports. And I was able to do this every year. So, track was in the summertime. It was started in March, then into August. Football started in August and then into November. So, my whole year was gone. So it was difficult, but at the same time, it was a blessing. I got to grow up and actually be a kid somewhat. And what I mean by that is I didn't have that responsibility of sport to sport. Like I only had like 2 or 3 months of downtime in between sports. But now I got a whole year, what I mean, to really figure out who I was, especially at that preteen team. I think that was a good opportunity for me, but also I struggled a bit. School got affected, so yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's important for people to hear. Like being injured or whatever it is unfortunate, but it's a reality of being an athlete. And when you get injured and you get that part of you taken away, you can look at it only negatively, or you can see, man, I have an opportunity to explore other parts of who I am. Because ultimately, you're more than DJ, the football player, the track athlete. Um, Take us into high school. So you get into high school football. I mean, are you playing varsity as a freshman, or what's the deal?
Yeah, man. That's so I have a unique, maybe not to many, but I have a unique story. So, the high school that I was initially attending didn't have football. So, by rule, I was able to play for the neighborhood school or whatever was considered. And since my dad worked at a high school in the district, I just started at the high school in which he was working. And so with that freshman year, I'm out there. I haven't played for over 2 years at that point. Football, I was out. And this is my freshman year. Somebody told the coach about me and told my dad to bring me out. Um, Man, I lasted probably a couple of weeks, and then I walked away from it again. This time by choice, not by force of an injury. It just didn't feel right. Like I just didn't feel myself anymore. 2 years off, and so I didn't play football in high school for 2 years. So I only have 2 years of high school football. In my history. So yeah, man, and it was kind of a process to that because I tried to play sophomore year. I tried to go to a school and play for a school within our district. I was practicing because season was about to start, and I found out that I was ineligible because based off the school that I was playing for, it was considered a magnet school in our district, and so you can only play for community schools, neighborhood schools. And I couldn't play, so I had to sit out that year. So now that was four. So it's like, I didn't play freshman or sophomore year. So then I was just blessed enough that the coach that I was about to play for my sophomore year um, helped me transfer,
Mm.
transfer to that school, and I was yeah, man. So I only played 2 years of high school football.
There are two things you said. One was you're doing track and a coach invites you to play football.
Yeah,
And then later now in life, I mean, you missed 4 years of football, 2 years of high school. Most people would say, like, it's going to be real hard for you
yeah.
to bounce back or to go anywhere.
Straight up.
And yet, you had a coach who I'm sure encouraged you and actually took steps to help you transfer and become eligible.
Yeah,
And as a coach, man, like you don't realize you could really change someone's life
yeah,
when you see that potential in them and call it out, because
yeah,
we know now you went on to playing college, now you're coaching, you're impacting other people, but somebody had to see that potential in you
Yeah.
and call it out of you, and now you get to do that
Yeah.
with other kids.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man. So you go out junior year,
Mhm.
and what's the deal? D back? Are you playing offense? Are you, how did you take us through? You go out to football junior year and you end up being a Division 1 player. I mean, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, man. I think it was man, it was by God's design, I would say, man. Because man, at the end of the day, man, when I started junior year, man, I was presented with a question that I believe still to this day changed the trajectory of my football career. I think I would have lasted longer if I would have made the other choice. Um, but um, but junior year when I went out, the coach specifically asked me, um, "Do you want to play offense or defense?" And so historically, I played defense as a little kid too, but my place was always with the ball in my hands. And I chose defense when he asked me that question. So I played corner because I just wanted to be like Champ Bailey. That's the guy that my favorite corner. So I just wanted to be like him. So I was like, man, I want to be able to, I want to bring the hits now, rather than getting hit. Um, and with that, man, so I played that my junior year, man, as corner, man. I did all right, man. It took me a while to get my feet back underneath me in the live games. So it wasn't like a standout year necessarily. But I made the plays that I needed to make. Yeah, I missed some plays. Then moving into senior year, what we had was we had a senior quarterback my junior year who was leaving, and so when him leaving, we had a void. So I played quarterback too as a kid. So I played running back and quarterback. So I played both roles. So I was just like, hey man, coach, let me play it. Um, and so that kind of I think that's what assisted me in getting the notice from college coaches.
Mm,
Was that piece? You know what I mean? Like, he could tote the ball, able to show my skill set. Because in that year, my senior year, I only played defense maybe 3 or 4 games the entire year, and that was towards the end of the year. I played safety. Um, and so playing quarterback, man, that just propelled me into that, man. Just being able to show what I can do by leading the team. Um, and so that, but at the end of the day, even though I could play, what almost derailed everything was my performance in the class.
mm.
So
Speak on that,
yeah, man.
because a lot of young guys think because they're a talented athlete,
Yeah,
that's gonna be the ticket, but
yeah,
speak to it.
yeah, man. That's real. So I didn't. So when I left football originally, at 12, I was doing well in school. And then after I left, I started seeing a downhill spiral. You know what I mean? Like I got my first F in 8th grade, and my mom would tell I tried to turn it into a D on the report card before she got it. But she knew what was up. And so that kind of followed me. That those behaviors in the classroom kind of followed me throughout high school. So I got these college coaches sitting downstairs. They brought me on visits, official visits, and everything to games, and now we talking about my GPA. Like we no longer talk about film anymore. And it was like, man, dog, you gonna have to take the ACT until you get this score because your GPA is low. Like be real, my second semester, my senior year, I had a 1.9 GPA. 1.9. So I didn't qualify for anything. Like I couldn't qualify for anything. And so they were just like, so what happened was this is when I realized how much I love the game. Is when it was about to be taken from me. And I was just like,
Mm,
you know what, we gotta figure this out. Like, how do I get qualified? Because I took the ACT 4 times just to get a 21. Because I was just like, man, and I hate tests, so I kept taking it. But then I was like, how do I get my GPA up to kind of go with that? So I had to take an online course outside of my school workload to be able to get my GPA up to a point where it qualified me to be able to even go to Murray stage.
Wow.
So I had to do that semester. I had my class at school, and then I had the online class that I had to complete. But also on the flip side, I was taking the ACT 4 times in my last semester. And so with all that, man, yeah, I think it's very important, man. We got to realize, like, man, that schoolwork is big, man. I always thought, like, man, if I could play, I could play. But man, I ain't never put, as a kid, coaches always said, man, they want to see our report card, so we had to show it. But when I got older, ain't no coaches asking that for school all the time. Like, our coaches, even though they got me into the school, they wasn't asking me, hey, man, how class doing, man? How you doing with your grades? It wasn't until, the college coaches was looking at like, oh, man. So in that piece, I think, yeah, man, just as an athlete, man, just really be cognizant of what's going on in the classroom, what's going on those report cards, man, because that's going to be key for coaches when they making that decision, man. Can they trust you in the classroom?
It shows me too. Well, there are a couple things. One, when a young person has like a hope and a vision for the future, they'll take it to a whole new level. Like, you realize, man, I love football and I could see myself playing football. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes. And you did it, you're taking multiple tests, online courses. And I think what can happen, unfortunately, for a lot of young people, they don't see a future or a hope. And so when you don't have a why, you don't have a purpose, school it can be boring, it can feel irrelevant, it can be not cool. And so I would even say from that, like, understand your purpose and your why as a young person and as an adult, like, and it has to be bigger than you.
Yes, sir.
Like, you don't want to show up to work, but you realize you have a family that you're providing for, you have a why, then you'll get it done.
Yeah.
So
that's real. So true.
That's good. The other thing, as a coach, man, it can be tempting to elevate winning to an unhealthy place where you don't even really care. And it's not to knock any coach you may have had, but it could be like, hey, this kid is good. He's going to help us win.
Yeah.
And as a coach, we have a responsibility to ask those questions. How's school? Let me see your report card, because if I care about you beyond just what I can get from you, I want to see your future prosper.
That's real.
So, okay. Getting recruited. So, are you getting multiple you're getting multiple offers, you're getting interest? Did you do anything to, like, besides obviously get on the field and perform? What other steps got you on the radar of these colleges?
Yeah, man. So I think it's important for people to realize, like, how the work that you do paves the way for people that follow you, and that also pertains to high school ball. So, like, for instance, if you look at, coaches always go back to the well when they have already got an athlete from there. And
Mm.
so I was a benefactor of an athlete that was before me, who was 2 years ahead of me. And so with that being a benefactor, he got to go. He won D1. He actually played in the same comp. We played in the same conference. We had one game in college against each other. And,
Mm.
so with him, me being a benefactor, like after he doing this thing down there at UT Martin, Tennessee Martin, those coaches actually got hired at Murray State, and so they came back to the well. They came back, and I was a recipient of that. On the flip side, I had a lot of interest, but once people saw my GPA, that interest kind of got derailed. But it was one school that stuck it out, and that was Murray State. Like they stuck it out. Like they came and sat in my living room, with my folks, chilling. Like it was a winter storm. Basically, came and sat in my living room, brought us on an official visit down there. Everything. Like they the ones that just stuck it out to walk me. Walk with me through this process, man, of even getting eligible. So
Wow.
I had the interest. It's just one school that stuck it out with me, man. And I didn't. People got like with my situation. So my high school coach, after our season was over, he took a job as a principal in our district. And so we had no coaches in the whole recruiting process after that. We were done. Like no coaches were involved or engaged in my recruiting. Like I had to make my own film, like burn the DVDs from the video camera that my parents had. I had to do all that on my own and send it out. And I didn't know I could send it out to all these colleges because I just couldn't make too many. It just cost so much money to do.
Mm.
So I was just sending them out. Like I was doing this whole process on my own. Like no communication between me and the coach. It was no coach in the middle. There was no middleman no more. It was just me and the coaches. And man, so I was really one of over controlling my whole recruiting process. Like nobody was giving me assistance. Nobody was giving me guidance. I didn't know how this worked.
Mm.
All I knew is I was gonna play ball, and that's all. Like I knew I was gonna play ball. I ain't got. Hey, I'll make it happen, whatever it is. I've come too far to let this go ahead fall to the wayside. So it was one school that stuck it out, man. After seeing my GPA, and they stuck with me through the whole process. So yeah, man, that's how that recruiting process worked for me, man. I was a benefactor, but also I was one that was willing to do what I had to do, even if it was just doing it on my own, without even any, no prior knowledge of how this process works.
Yeah. That's gold because, man, I think like some of these young people I've coached or seen, they have this kind of fantasy like they're just magically gonna get a D1 offer.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't work like that. You have to have some type of connection. And then I love the fact that you put in that work and you took the investment into yourself to actually make it happen because I feel like most like to me that's a sign that you believe in yourself is when you're willing to invest and you're willing to take action like and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do that for you,
That's
nobody else is going to do it for you.
right.
I mean, that's gold. So you get to college.
Mhm.
What happens? I mean, are you redshirt, special teams?
Yeah, man. Oh man, man, if you listen to my story now, it didn't get any easier. So, I mean, like, and it wasn't due to my abilities. It was due to, man, a lot of things I just couldn't control. So when I got to college, man, like legitimately, like I was at the bottom of the depth chart as a corner. Like I was 7. I'm looking around the room like, ain't no way 6 other guys better than me, man, in this room. So what y'all got? But I feel like it came down to what school I came from, coming from the inner city of St. Louis. A lot of these cats coming from suburbs, and some of these cats already been there, so they already got established. So they competition level is probably a little bit higher. And so, but I'm at 7, man. But I worked myself up. That first camp, I worked myself up to being second string. So so it's me and another freshman who are in the top two on each one of the corners. So I mean like we start like we there like we gonna be playing, and so we're about to play Louisville. I went through the entire camp, made second string corner as a true freshman. We about to play Louisville. Louisville at the time was like number 11, 10 in the world. They had like Brom, Harry Douglas. Like these cats were beasts. But then next thing you know, I get a call like, hey, the clearinghouse, you haven't cleared the clearinghouse yet. So the NCAA clearinghouse, so everything has to clear from your transcripts and all that. And I'm like, what? Like it hasn't cleared. And so it didn't clear. I didn't get cleared. So I didn't play that first game. So I'm thinking, all right, it's gonna get cleared for the second game. I'm gonna play my true freshman year. I didn't get cleared to like the fourth game. And so that decision was made to just redshirt. So I got redshirted, man. And next year, spring ball, I'm first year, man. I'm playing my man because we just lost two seniors. I'm in there. I earned a starting spot for the fall camp coming up. I'm like, man, I'm the starter. We get to fall camp though. I catch staph. I catch staph in my bloodstream during camp, and like when I tell people, if anybody ever seen the movie Hitch, I look like Will Smith when he was all, you know what I mean, just all those sores like in the middle of the aisle, just lumped up, swollen. That's what I look like for an entire week, man. I lost 20 pounds, couldn't eat. Like I was just sickly. Like they didn't know what was going on for a month. Man, I had so many needles in me, steroid needles, trying to see what was going on. Come to find out, it was the fluid on my knee that got infected. And so they had to drain that antibiotic. So then, man, I set out the first few games that season. I came back and I played against my dude that I said who I was a benefactor of. My first game, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna ball out. But I just wasn't the same. And in that game, man, it was a very cheap shot. Dude rolled my ankle, and I was finished for the rest of the season. So 2 years gone now, like boom. So then in the fall year, I'm like, I earned the starting spot again in the spring. But then that fall, you know what I mean, we something changed. Like we brought back the coach. See, the coach that recruited me, who came in my living room, the D coordinator, eventually, he left when I got there originally. Then he came back. And I was like, all right, boom, I'm in there. Like I know hey, this is my dude. Like we finna be balling. But then I know they brought in a JUCO player, JUCO corner. So I'm like, all right, so me and him gonna go side by side. But it was a piece to that. My position coach let me know. He's like, man, they say you too risky. And so they pushed me down second on the depth chart. So I'm like, what? Too risky. And so that year I played Scrambley. You know what I mean? I got my first career interception and everything, man. One-handed. I was just like, oh yeah. So I'm like, man, but it was of course it was a bad year for a team. Then that coaching staff, they got fired. So I didn't know what was up. So I had 2 years left of my eligibility. And we got a new coaching staff. They just came up. They won national championships and D2, and they were just at Georgia Southern where they were winning, and they came to Murray State. And I'm thinking, and of course I know they're gonna bring their own players, their own recruits in. I'm thinking, all right, you know what I mean, it might be time for me to transfer. Just like you see that transfer portal now when it changes of coaches. Because I think players understand that, like, coaches, if you was a part of a losing season or losing program at the time, much of that, coaches are going to clean house or find a way to bring their own people in. So I'm thinking now, I'm running that through my head. And I'm like, all right, nah, some of my guys like, no, stick it out, man. Stick it out. See what's up. So I stayed. They tried to move me to safety. And at the time, I wasn't embracing that. Like, I wasn't embracing safety. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. My boy was like, dog, you got the size. You can play the next level at safety, everything. I was like, nah, I'm a corner, man. I played it. And so eventually they moved me back down to a corner. and they made me into like a hybrid. So remember, I played like the linebacker, like nickel corner, safety type deal. And man, that first year playing that role, man, I made plays that I knew I could have made early in my career. Like I was balling. And then so when we got to senior year, I'm like, man, this the year, man. I get on the map. I'm trying to go to the league. We got Louisville for the first game. Like, yeah, national TV. I'm like, all right. So we get up there, man. I'm in the game, man. What I mean? They throw Teddy Bridgewater. He decides on a third and like 10, 11. I'm gonna try. I'm like, all right. So what I mean, it was just the hard work that I put in that summer at camp, man. It paid off, and I picked them off. Like, so Teddy's first pass in his college career is an interception to me. So we'll always hold that. And I was, what I mean, but my man went further than I did. So that speaks to that. But at the same time, man. So yeah, that's what happened in that senior year, man. Man, it went well, but man, I dropped like 4 interceptions. I dropped 4 interceptions that year. Should have had.
Mm.
And so that kind of changed the trajectory of kind of that league type deal. And man, I was like, man, I was dropping. Man, it was just rough in that sense, but it was a great season. Those last 2 seasons were good seasons, man. It had me get 2 looks at least from 2 NFL teams, but it just didn't work out. Yeah, man.
Yeah. And your journey, a theme that I see is like you had so many chances to quit,
Yeah.
And I think life provides all kinds of opportunities to quit and to give up on your dreams and your hopes.
Yeah.
And even when it seemed like, man, everything is against you, all these circumstances. And I love that you persevered through all that. And when you're on the field, and you pick off Teddy Bridgewater, it's like you would look back and say, because there were times you probably felt like quitting, but in that moment you would look back and say, like, what was I thinking? Thinking about quitting, like thinking about giving up. Like, in that moment, it's so clear, but when you're in the difficulty, like you gotta press on and see that future. So I love that, man. He picked off Teddy Bridgewater. He's being humble. He also sacked Jimmy Garoppolo. So this guy, he's a real deal. So one more, and then we'll bounce into some of your faith journey. But you graduate, you have a couple looks at the NFL, and you end up where I meet you on Young Life staff. Yeah. So just how'd that happen?
Yeah, man. Man, that happened by chance, to be real. So man, because I didn't know anything about Young Life at all. Like, I've never even heard of it. But I had an opportunity when I started seminary, and I was, I had to do like a sort of like an internship. Like, you had to do something in a multi-ethnic space, so you had to be involved with a multi-ethnic church. And so the church that we decided on to attend actually had the leader at the time, who still is the leader of Young Life here in St. Louis City, attending that church. But he was about to leave the church at that time. And so he attended one service, and I met him that one time. And the pastor just connected us like, yeah, man, y'all need to work. Yeah, he's a good guy. Man, you should consider bringing him on. And that conversation kind of started. And it didn't really take it anywhere until later on. And so that was my first introduction into Young Life. And so maybe about a year later, um, you know, what I mean, we started talking about that role because I was currently working somewhere else, and we kind of chopped it up, got cool. And then as I was moving away from what I was doing at that time, be honest, I needed to make ends meet. Like I got to feed my family, man. So that's and it was love shown by that, like that consideration, that empathy, like, hey, like you're a fit for this. Like I believe that you can help us here. But at the same time, I think we can help you too by this being a position that you also paid. And it was a blessing, man. So yeah.
So we talk about coincidence, but there are some things that you look back like it had to be God's provision. Like what are the odds you're in that one church service and the other dude's in there like I look back at life and see so many things like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, tell us about your faith journey. Like, did you grow up in this Christian house or how did you get from being a kid to,
Yeah.
now you're a pastoral resident?
Yeah, man. Good question. Nah, man, I didn't necessarily grow up I didn't grow up as a Christian. I didn't grow up as a kid that went to church. I can only remember maybe once or twice that I went to church as a kid. You know, I think that was once to my grandfather's church. Might have been Easter, man, like normal, like one time. And so, but we always had this understanding of who God and Jesus was. You know what I mean? In the sense of my folks still had the Bible, like the Bible in black homes, man. Everybody has a Bible. I don't care if everybody had it. My mom had the Bible, and they'd be like, man, just pray when things are tough. But we didn't go to church. So as I grew up, man, I wasn't really concerned about my faith. Like I was just moving on with life. Like really my first introduction as a person to even think anything really in scripture was at the age of 9. Like I was just telling somebody this the other day, like, man, like we were before a game, it was like, let's pray. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Our Father in heaven. And so it was like the Lord's Prayer was my first engagement with the scripture, man. And that started in football. Like that was always a part of the culture. Like let's pray before the games, pray after, and it was just always the culture. But as I got older, man, I got into college. I started to. I found it was a position held by a guy that actually played at a rival school in the conference who came over as a chaplain. He became a chaplain, and you know what I mean, cool dude. But you know what I mean, I was like, I ain't worried about no chapel. I ain't going to no chapel. Like I didn't go to chapel. Like I was just, but he was always in the locker rooms. He was always on the field. You know what I mean? Just really trying to still be cool and build relationships. Or he'll be out eating with us, wherever we were. Like he traveled with the team and all that. And so like that's my first like introduction in the sense of okay, this is real big. And man, to be right before I even got to college, like to even go back a little bit more. So me playing football, like I was just thinking when I was driving over, I was like, man, if he asked me a question such as this, how do I answer that? How do I make sure that I answer that correctly and wisely, so somebody can really understand like how God has been just doing things with such things as the game of football. So and so with that, when I was playing football, see, I grew up. We didn't have in my family, especially my dad's side, we didn't have football players. You know what I mean? You just had guys who played ball, and then that was it as kids in high school and stuff like that. But on my mom's side, we had a couple of cats that made it to the league. But one of my cousins who lived in the area out here in St. Louis, man, we was like me and my little brother, man, we was just fans of him. Like we was trying to cheer him on and everything. I remember in '02, like man, he went to state and he was on T01 and he went to state and he was on TV down at the dome where the Rams used to play. And we was like cheering him on. And so me and that relationship between me and him grew because of our 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 um our commonality when it pertains to sports like football. Like he was out there in the suburbs, I'm in the city. So that's kind of our connection. And so with that connection, before I went off to school to go play ball, I always tried to train with him when he was here. Because he played with Big Ben Roethlisberger at Miami, Ohio. He was one of his top receivers one year. And so I just trained with him, and then ended up introducing me one of his best friends that from high school who he played ball with, who ended up going to Mizzou to play football. And we went to the little softball little thing, and he took me out there, and I got to meet him. And his friend was about to be a pastor eventually, who is a pastor now. So like I had that in relationship, so I had that relationship already starting before I went to college. Just like we didn't really talk as much, but I already had that was been established because that'd be later on in the story. But at the same time when we talk, so at the same time, me seeing the chaplain, I'm like, okay, I've met a guy back home who's kind of played ball. And he was in ministry now because he came back. Now got this chaplain who played ball and he's in ministry, but he's here with the football team. So I was always in those spaces. I've always found myself in spaces, um, a lot of due to football with people who were of faith. But I still wasn't a believer. Like I still didn't do none of that. You know what I mean? And so as I got out of college, the relationship that I just told you about kind of blossomed. Like, man, I needed somebody to talk to, who I could talk to about ball, who I could talk to about faith. So I just started going Bible study. After a couple of years after I got back, I started going to Bible study. Um, and irregularly though. And so, you know what I mean? But in this Bible study, it was unique. It wasn't like the Bible studies I've seen before where cats be up there preaching like almost a second Sunday service just on Wednesday. But this one was just like we got a passage. We kind of express how we think the passage, how we interpret the passage individually, how it's connecting with us. And people were sharing people were asking tough questions. And I was like, for real, this Bible study? Like we can ask hard questions. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'll try to come back more and more. But then I started coming back a little bit more, man. And then eventually I found myself on Sunday service. And then eventually it just led to me, man, giving my life to Christ in that church, man. So yeah, man, I didn't grow up in the church. But how does somebody that didn't grow up in the church in a seminary? Well, man, that's real, man. I would just say, as I grew up in that church that I gave my life to, I started having struggles. I got ordained as a minister in that church. And then after that being ordained, I started having a lot of struggles. I started dealing with a lot of questions. I was in that time, I found myself in a dark space, depression, everything, man. But also I was struggling because some of the things that were being talked about in the church, I was struggling with in a sense. And so I had somebody I was cool with, a friend of mine who was like, we was having lunch one day and he was like, man, have you ever heard of Covenant Seminary? I was like, no, I ain't never heard of no seminary. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, they teach they teach the Bible, they teach the languages and all that. I'm like, for real? Because at the time I was like taking an online course at Dallas Theological Seminary for free. Like you could watch the videos and I was lost. I was like, I don't know what the heck they talking about. So I came up to this seminary, man. And when I came, me and my wife came on a visit, and this seminary opened me up because all I saw was our faith as black and white. So I only saw black church, white church. So we came on the campus. We see a Indian dude walking the campus. And I'm like, Indian dude walking the campus. I'm like, I looked at my wife like, this is where we need to be. This is where we need to be. So I was like, so in my faith journey, not growing up, I grew up in a black dominant community, a beautiful black dominant community. Then I got to go to a church. Then I went to school, which of course it wasn't black. I had to adjust, but I was always surrounded by faith believers. Like even on the team, cats that will always talk about God and Christ. You know what I mean? Just in that, and at the time, I ain't trying to hear that. Man, come on, man, let's just go party. But these are guys, like these are good dudes. Like they never wavered in who they were, and I respect that even to this day. And then that, I guess those were seeds being planted. So when I got out of school and the relationship that I already was having established, that just grew, and that drew me to the church. The game of football was foundational. God used it as foundational, a foundational piece, man, for me to find myself in the church, man, for real.
And that is so encouraging to me. There are a few things that I resonate with and I want to pick out. Like one, it was similar for me. Like growing up, you're into sports, trying to get girls. Yeah, I liked hip hop ever since I saw the movie Like Mike. But so it felt like God wasn't into what I was into. You know, that's how I felt going to church was like the things that I like and that I'm interested in aren't really relevant at church. But here you're saying football is how you were first introduced to scripture. Football relationships are essentially what God used to bring people into your life. And that's literally why I'm doing this podcast is because sports are not like an unspiritual thing. Like God cares about all aspects of life. And I want people to see like, man, just because you're into sports and you're into certain music or whatever, like it doesn't mean that God cannot be in those spaces with you. I was super encouraged too about these multiple steps on your journey. Because as you know, as a minister and me, it can feel like, oh, I'm not accomplishing anything. Like I'm out here trying to share truth with these people or build a relationship or whatever. And it seems like nothing is happening, but you may be planting a seed. Like that first guy you met, it was like, he might have felt like, oh, DJ is like, he doesn't care what I would say or he's never gonna like get it.
Yeah.
But then he didn't know later you would meet this chaplain and it was like, okay, now I'm meeting multiple people. So man, I love that. Super encouraged. What is a lesson or something you learned playing sports that's carried with you outside of sports and impacted your life? I'm sure there are many, but if you can give us one.
Yeah, man. Move on. So move on. Just that as a DB, you gotta have short memory, and that was a gift within itself. You know what I mean? If a play happens on you, you gotta be able to move on to the next play, and give maximum effort. Do what you gotta do because the difference is, it's just like in the game of football. You might give up a big play and you stop them at the 1 yard line. The fact that you stop them at the 1 yard line now gives the defense an opportunity to stop them 4 more other times before getting in. And so with that, you got to get back up there and you got to focus on your assignment. You got to focus on your responsibility. So that short memory is one of the biggest things that I learned as an athlete as it pertains to life. Like things are going to happen in my life. You know what I mean? I'm going to. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm going to to make a mistake. You know what I mean? We're going to have some rough times. That day might be rough. Something might happen, but you got to know how to just move on, man. And not move on in the sense that you don't think about it, but move on in the sense that you got to focus right now. like that cannot affect what you need to do right now in this moment. And that's, man, so that's been very helpful, man. Short memory, man, and learning to move on, um, and having and understanding that you still have a responsibility. And you got to take care of it.
That's so good. I remember I played back in the day, and my coach, he would say, if the linemen get beat, a few people know. If the linebackers get beat, the real football fans may know. If a D-back gets beat, everybody knows.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not that you dismiss the past or you act like it's not there, but you got to learn, like, okay, that happened. I can't change it, but I got to get up and make the next play. And I mean, one of the most epic NFL plays was DK Metcalf chased down, was it Buda Baker?
Yeah, back, yep.
And he chased him down, 108 yards, and then they had a goal line stand. Yep. And it's like, you never know what could happen if you don't give up. So that's beautiful, man. I love it. As we come to a close, complete the statement. Dear young athlete, what do you want to say to those kids that you coach, or, the people out there?
All right. Dear young athlete, know that you are more than what you can do in your respective sport. That you're more than that. You are a whole person. That's just one of the facets of who you are. And when you know that, I believe that you will excel in that sport in which you're in because you give attention to every aspect of your life.
I love that, because you said you're more than your sport. And people can think like, oh, that means like I'm not gonna do my best in my sport. But you're saying, look, when you know who you are, you'll actually do the best in your sport without having to value yourself based on your performance. Man, that's a good word.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate you. And man, I'm sure your story is going to impact a lot of people, man, whether in this podcast or as a pastor or as a coach and just as a mentor, as a father. So I want to encourage you, just like your football journey, whatever you may go through, man, like, keep pushing, and something great is around the corner for you.
Yes, sir.
So, any last words?
Man, appreciate you having me. I think what you're doing is an awesome thing, man, for coaches, for players, man, and it's truly a blessing to be able to share my story, but it's a blessing for you to be willing to listen to it and be willing to share it with others, man. So, man, keep doing your thing, JT, man. Man, I believe that, man, you continue to put the work in, this is going to grow larger than what you already envisioned it as. It is going to be. So, man, appreciate you, man. Nothing but love, G.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Dear Young Athlete podcast. Make sure you check out our website linked in the description and find out how you could bring Dear Young Athlete to your team or your group. Check out our merchandise and use code all caps DYA20 and take 20% off your first order. Also, consider partnering with us on Patreon. You'll get regular discounts, you'll get exclusive content, and you'll be supporting a great movement. Wherever you're listening, make sure you follow and leave us a review. It really helps the algorithm and helps this podcast reach more people. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.